Alright, we're just about to see the Eagles and Chiefs square off in New Orleans for the Super Bowl, as both teams got some positive news on the injury report. However, this decision from Kansas City creates a mismatch nightmare that Philly is guaranteed to take advantage of. Granted, there's an area that the Birds can't overlook from KC because it's definitely proved costly. So let's talk about that, all the other matchups to keep your eye on, and everything else ahead of the big game. But first, let's run it. What's up, guys? We have almost made it, and yes, it's felt like a near eternity, but let's start with some optimism or maybe a few reasons for some superstitions. After a big congratulations to former Eagles cornerback Eric Allen, who was finally inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is especially important because Allen had been up for the honor for 19 years, meaning he only had one more year before he would have gotten moved to the seniors committee. But unfortunately for those wondering, that is drastically harder to get selected at that point. Fortunately, it's a non-issue and the voters got it right. I mean, after all, Allen had 58 interceptions and 9 touchdowns throughout his 14-year career. Plus, he had more interceptions than 22 of the 37 defensive backs already enshrined. So good for him. And the other hardware Philly claimed was Saquon Barkley winning Offensive Player of the Year honors. Albeit, yeah, it felt like he's been the MVP. Either way, between that and Eli Manning not being voted into the Hall, Giants fans' year just continued with the way it's gone.
I'm going to have a tough time sleeping if Saquon goes to Philadelphia, I'll tell you that.
And the AP Offensive Player of the Year is Saquon Barkley.
Like, you almost feel bad, but again, thank you, New York. I will say, honestly, the biggest snub of the entire night, or both of them really, were Zack, Baun, and Vic Fangio. Like, I don't know what a guy has to do. Fine, the argument can be made for some people about Baun just not being a big enough of a household name, which is why he finished 5th in voting. Yet when you see both Detroit coordinators in Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn ahead of Fangio, it makes you question things just a bit.
This game is rigged, man.
Look, congratulations to Ben Johnson on the award, but I'm just saying, if Vic Fangio took the number 29 defense from a season ago, turned them into the number 1 defense with the youth that this squad has, feels like it should be a little bit more credit than he got. But anyway, I'll get into that one in a second. Still, kudos to the fellas that did come home with the hardware, and hopefully it's a good omen for the Eagles on Sunday. Also, just to keep that positive energy out there, do me a favor and drop a like on this video, and then go down to the comment section and let me know who the first touchdown scorer in the Super Bowl will be. Because if the Eagles win and you get that right, I'm going to give away a signed Saquon Barkley helmet to one lucky subscriber and a signed Cooper DeJean helmet to one lucky subscriber during the live stream of the game. Now, by the way, for those looking for some positivity, the last time an Eagles defensive back was inducted into the Hall of Fame, Philly won the Super Bowl, so just saying.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
There is way more than a chance, and it's funny, because on Thursday you had these analysts on TV picking the Chiefs, yet flipped to Friday and they all started changing over and taking the Eagles. Although I guess I shouldn't say everyone, because NFL insider Peter Schrager is picking the Chiefs to win. And if you've read anything, then you know that he took KC to win at the beginning of the season and correctly picked the last 5 Super Bowl winners, leaving some to say the dude is a certified ball knower.
Yeah, well, that's just like, your opinion, man.
For the record, this is also the same guy that picked the New York Jets to win the AFC East, along with the NFL MVP to be Aaron Rodgers.
Missed it by that much.
I mean, technically, he got the division right, just not the team or player. All I'm saying is nobody gets every pick correct, yet it does feel like everyone's against the Eagles. Because in case you haven't been following along, the quote-unquote experts across ESPN, Fox, CBS, and even the NFL Network are taking the Chiefs to win at nearly a 70% clip. Which, you know what, is fine, because the Birds thrive in that underdog territory.
And you know what underdogs is? It's a hungry dog. Hungry dogs run faster.
I will say, there's an added benefit to all these people counting us out. Because shout out to Underdog as the official sponsor of the channel, but they're offering a special Philly special promo this weekend. Seriously, as the official sponsor of the channel, you're not going to find better promos, discounts, and multipliers for the big game. I mean, it's pretty simple. All you got to do is get the phone, make sure you have the Underdog app, then scan the QR code, use code Philly Special, or just click the link in the description and you can get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. The best part right now is that they're offering all users a no-sweat promotion, where either you win the pick or you'll get the money back in bonus credit. Heck, we capitalized on that in the NFC Championship game where we turned $30 into almost $1,000. Now, here's the one thing that I do want to point out. With it being a no-sweat promotion, there's a limit on this, so it's just $15. But again, with it being a no-sweat promo, I'd say go for broke, load up with as many picks as possible, and see if we can hit big. I mean, for example, I've got 7 potential plays on a $15 entry that pays up to $1,300. Or if you're looking for a more calculated play, here's what I'm going with for Sunday. I'll take Dallas Goedert over 52.5 yards. Remember, the Chiefs allowed the most yards to tight ends this season. And then give me over 4 catches for DeVonta Smith. Also going to take Chris Jones to get a sack. Yes, you do have to take one guy on the opposing team. And Jalen does hold on to the ball a long time, so that's what I'll go with. And then finally, I'm taking Jalen Hurts to have the longest completion of the game. FYI, Kansas City only has 4 plays on the entire season over 40 yards. So I will gladly take my chances on the 50-50 play with Hurts. Now, I know, unfortunately, the pick'em options isn't offered to everyone in all locations. However, you can still swap over to the draft option where Underdog is paying out $250,000 to first place on just a $10 lineup for the big game. So there you go. Get signed up with the best option in fantasy sports, and plus, since they're the official sponsor of the channel, you won't get any better promos when you do it. Use code PhillySpecial, scan the QR code, or just click the link in the description and you get up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Alright, speaking of underdogs, I'm sick and tired of everyone continuing to bring up Mahomes' 8-0 record against Fangio. Because while that stat is true, it lacks context. Remember, Fangio's offense in those games only averaged 11.9 points, and half of those games were quarterbacked by Drew Lock. In fact, shout out to Dave Zangaro for the stat, but Mahomes' passer rating in those 8 games was 95.9, which is well below his career rating of 102.1. And the other part that hardly anyone seems to mention is that not only is this one of the best defenses Fangio's had, but they're also battle-tested as opposed to the 2022 squad that was good but didn't have a resume of opposing QBs that they'd limited. I mean, think about it. The Eagles' defense took on quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford twice, Jaden Daniels twice, and Jordan Love twice, while making them play some of their worst games of the entire season. Granted, sure, Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl is a completely different story, which is going to make it one of the best chess matches to watch in the game. Now, personally, I expect to see a lot of dink and dunk from Andy Reid's offense as they lead the league in average drive time and are one of the best on third down. However, unlike previous seasons, the Chiefs have declined significantly in the red zone, whereas Fangio's defense has proven to be one of the best units in the scoring area this year. I just bring that up to prepare people because I know that sometimes it's the bend but don't break that people hate. We probably will see these long, methodical drives, but again, as long as you're not giving up touchdowns, you settle for 3 points, that's perfectly fine. And then also the other part to the Super Bowl that not a lot of people are seeming to bring up is the fact that Fangio is willing to and actually make adjustments is huge. Because we didn't necessarily see that in the first one, with Nick Sirianni admitting in his first Super Bowl he underestimated the extra time and ability to get adjustments in before the second half. But that he and the others won't make that same mistake this time. Although on that note of adjustments, it does feel like the Eagles need to seriously take advantage of Jalen Carter and the adjustments or the change for the Chiefs having left guard Mike Caliendo. I mean, Caliendo ranks 72nd out of 77 guards in the NFL this season. And despite KC moving Joe Thuney out to tackle to help the outside, the Chiefs have graded as 19th based on their interior pass blocking. So, with Jalen Carter fully good to go from his illness earlier in the week, I'm expecting him to take advantage, or maybe more likely, he gets double-teamed and Milton Williams has a chance for a big play. Oh, just one more thing, even though the Thuney move to tackle has helped, that hasn't meant that it's necessarily fixed the Chiefs' problems. Heck, I know it's Will Anderson, but the Chiefs were in a bad way most of the game based on edge pressure, so keep an eye on Nolan Smith and Josh Sweat. Alright, let me ask you guys a serious question. If there's one area of concern going into this matchup, what would you say that it is? Mine is a very easy answer in special teams, because for one, we saw how it killed us in the last Super Bowl, but also that can be the huge equalizer in a game. And with Nico Remigio, the Chiefs have capitalized in both playoff games, like the 63-yard kick return in the divisional round against the Texans, and then his 41-yard punt return in the AFC Championship game that led to a KC score. Plus, that's not even getting into the Jake Elliott concerns about extra points or like long-range field goals. But again, I'm overall confident here in the Eagles. It just feels like special teams make sure to capitalize, take advantage of. That's the one major weakness, or I wouldn't say weakness, but just major concern if Kansas City is able to keep this thing very close, get the slight advantage. We've seen how that can play a factor. Now, on the flip side, the offense should be able to capitalize against Steve Spagnuolo's defense. Of course, they will need to keep an eye out for exotic pressures and Spag's affinity to blitz his corners. Yet when you boil this thing down, you're looking at Saquon Barkley and the Birds' rushing attack versus the Chiefs' leaky run defense, Dallas Goedert against a KC defense that couldn't stop opposing tight ends, and a receiving core that should allow for mismatches with either A.J. Brown or DeVonta Smith, depending on where they send Trent McDuffie. So again, look, overall on paper and based on the matchups, the Eagles definitely have a serious advantage, which is why I could see this thing playing out where the Eagles have like a 2-possession lead, especially because this is not the same Chiefs team as in recent years. Since take a look at their offensive and defensive efficiency, and it's the worst it's ever been during the Reid and Mahomes tandem. Also, it's ironically the same grade as the New England Patriots ranking in 2017, and we know exactly how that one turned out. Look, the beauty is there shouldn't be any excuses because when it comes to the injury report, both sides have about as clean of a bill of health as you can, with the Eagles only listing Britton Covey as the official guy out for Sunday, and it is looking like Nick Gates will probably give up his spot to BG, since Graham said he's for sure playing and got in a full practice Friday. By the way, the other guy out there is DeVonta Smith, who I've gotten several questions about as he was a limited participant all week. However, he said the hamstring is just routine maintenance, and we've seen him deal with that throughout the season, so not really worried there. And then for KC, they'll have everyone available except for wide receiver Sky Moore, who's listed as doubtful. So good news all around. Of course, with the big game right around the corner, I had Eagles writer Anthony DiBona join to discuss the biggest matchups, storylines, and sleepers you need to keep an eye on. Super Bowl 59, Eagles and Chiefs. What are like the maybe top 2 or 3 matchups or areas that you're looking at there? Potentially, under the radar, as Drew mentioned, but just some areas to look at, 2 or 3.
So I'll start with the under the radar player. I'll go with the Chiefs player because maybe this might throw things off a little bit, but Nico Remigio, who's their return specialist now, he had a big return against the Bills. He's had a couple of big returns throughout the season, and we saw obviously the return aspect of the game play a big role in the last Super Bowl that these teams played off. So I think if there was a time where they kind of flipped the field, that would be a player that I would watch for because we've seen the Eagles special teams unit. They've played better in recent weeks, but they have struggled at times. So that'll be something to monitor. But diving into the areas to potentially exploit for the Eagles, I think the number one thing is a guy that I mentioned the last time we had a live stream, but I think it's going to be a big Dallas Goedert performance. And the Chiefs have really struggled against tight ends this season. They'd have allowed the most yards of any teams to opposing tight ends this season. So the fact that Dallas Goedert has kind of been on fire in the playoffs, I think playing in that Week 18 game, a lot of people thought, myself included, that it was a little weird to see him play so deep into that game. And they were like, oh, we just want him to knock off the rust. But clearly it worked out because he's leading the team in receiving yards so far in the postseason. And this is obviously a great matchup for him. He didn't play against them last year when they played during the regular season. So this could be kind of a revenge game for him. And then jumping over to the defensive side of the ball, it has to be Jalen Carter. And not just Jalen Carter, but Milton Williams as well. I think the Eagles kind of interior duo of those two, considering that Kansas City's kind of had to shuffle things around. They put Joe Thuney out at left tackle and Caliendo's now in his spot. And ever since they made that change, they've allowed a pressure rate of 9.0%, which is the 4th highest in the NFL since that they made that change. And if you look at before they made that change, they allowed a pressure rate of just 5.1%, which was the 4th lowest in the NFL. So they've basically completely flipped as far as allowing pressure along the interior of the offensive line since making that change. And obviously Jalen Carter and Milton Williams have been one of the NFL, if not the best interior duo as far as rushing the passer. So that matchup is huge. And then lastly, I'm going to jump back over to the offensive side. A.J. Brown versus press coverage. We've known all season long how well he's been against press coverage, how well he's been outside the numbers. And guess who lines up their cornerbacks the most in press coverage in the NFL? The Kansas City Chiefs at
Spags
at 51.5% of the time. So Jalen Hurts, he's recorded the high, players that have been targeted at least 100 times in press coverage. He's recorded the highest target percentage at 37.3% and the highest yards per route run at 3.5 yards per route. So he's just dominated press coverage, and obviously that's what Kansas City kind of likes to lean on. So I think he could be in for a huge game as well. So him and Dallas Goedert should be making plenty of catches, and then obviously DeVonta Smith has had his way against the Chiefs as well. So I think this could be a little bit more of an aerial attack from the Eagles than people expect.
Okay, I like it. That I was going to ask you because I got a couple plays that I'm putting together, and it was like Jalen possibly over on yards. It could be a little bit of difference if the Chiefs are going so much to stop Saquon, and it's not like we're going out there saying, oh, they're going to limit him, because you've mentioned this so many different times. You take a look at the Buffalo Bills game when James Cook is running for a really good yards per carry. Same thing for Joe Mixon. So the Chiefs have been susceptible in the ground game, but I'm kind of agreeing with you there because there's so many areas of that pass defense that kind of aligns for Jalen or some strengths of that, because we've seen if Jalen is blitzed and they run man coverage, or I guess, variations of that, like Jalen's been able to pick apart. And so, people can think for sure back to Super Bowl 57, what he did naturally, and moving on, to Jalen wanting to prove a point. And I love the doubters because Jalen flat out said, he's like, it's no secret that it's extra motivation. Like whenever I hear that, he said that earlier this week. So, you know what, go out there and prove it. But, when you got 3 of those type of pass catchers in a Dallas Goedert, DeVonta Smith, and A.J. Brown, I'm right there with you. I was going to bring up, because you mentioned Remigio and the special teams unit. That is one area that is very much a sore spot for lots of Eagles fans for a number of reasons, especially in the Super Bowl. You got to take care of business there. I mean, the dude did have the 60-something yard return against the Texans, the kick return, and then also a really long return against Buffalo for a punt return. I hope and I feel like this unit, they've been really good with their gunners, but it's certainly an area of focus that I think a lot of times we go into a game of this magnitude. It's like, hey, offense and defense, and you kind of can overlook it because of the scars. As fans, I know that we are not. It's just hopefully, hey, Michael Clay, it's good that you have this experience. It's good that you had that experience to look back on, but it needs to be a heightened focus, because if there's one area when we talk about, oh, hey, the Eagles on paper, they have a whole lot more advantages than the Chiefs do. We've seen special teams is that great equalizer. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. But Jake Elliott, is that one of the areas of weakness? Where does that fall? And I guess where's the confidence level with Jake Elliott going into this game?
I mean, it's literally like you're looking at my computer screen. He's the number one area of weakness. And I know Jake Elliott's played better in domes. I think he's only missed one kick in domes this season. It happened to be in New Orleans, but it also was a 60-yard field goal. So, I mean, hopefully they're really taking those at relatively high clip, and maybe not at all. I would rather, and that it feels like in that situation, I think Nick Sirianni might be a little bit more aggressive and just be going for it, especially against the Chiefs, where you want to limit as many extra possessions that they would have as possible. So I think last time around, I think they were a little bit too conservative in the Super Bowl, whereas this time, I think he might be a little bit more aggressive. I think you might see him, especially towards midfield, go for it in those situations like he has in the playoffs thus far. And then, so yeah, Jake Elliott, I mean, how could you not be concerned about him? I know he's kicked a little bit better here and there, but it still seems like you mentioned, since the bye week, it seems like the Eagles' defense and offense have kind of been steady as far as like their performance and what to expect. And that, like I guess it's even not even just the field goals, even the kickoffs. Like it seems like sometimes there was that Washington, the loss to Washington, where they were starting like consistently at like the 35 or 40 yard line, like maybe even midfield. Like you just can't let that happen, especially against a team like the Chiefs, where they're able to be so efficient on offense and move the ball so well. So you don't want to like cut any corners or have any inconsistencies. And it seems like special teams as a whole has kind of been shaky, and then obviously Jake Elliott in particular with his struggles, even with extra points. You told me about the nightmare that you had last night. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Sure, let's do it. Yeah, you just outed me there anyway. But no, for people, I don't mind sharing this, but I literally woke up. And I don't usually look. I'll just be honest. I think about Eagles football all the time, but I don't usually dream Eagles football. Like I don't have dreams or nightmares. This was an absolute nightmare. And I texted you because whenever I got up this morning, I was like, you're not going to believe, like I had a terrible, terrible nightmare. I woke up in a sweat because, and it didn't end. So this is the part where I'm like, well, maybe it was okay. But I woke up at the point where we had scored a touchdown to go up 26-20 with 3 minutes left. And Jake Elliott missed the extra point. And then I woke up because it was like, oh my gosh, we're only up by 6. And, we remember what happened in the Rams game. We did win it. So maybe it's okay. But yeah, I'm absolutely, you could tell even in the subconscious, myself was going like, oh, Jake Elliott, please do not cost us this thing, even for something like an extra point. So I'm, yes, right there.
Listen, I think maybe he'll turn back the clocks a little bit. We'll see big game Jake Elliott make a couple big field goals. Who knows? But going on to my next area of potential weakness, I think you have to talk about Mekhi Becton. I know he's played really well for the most part this season, but I think, honestly, the whole interior of the offensive line has kind of struggled a little bit in pass protection throughout the postseason. We saw the Rams have their way a little bit with like these twists and stunts, and now you have Spags' defense where they're going to bring up a lot of unique looks where Cam Jurgens is going to be super important in this game as far as like identifying who is going to be pressure, who's going to drop back, because Spags does all sorts of funky stuff where you might see Chris Jones drop back in coverage, or you might see another defensive tackle or defensive end drop back in coverage, and the slot corner is going to come on a blitz, or both safeties are going to come and both defensive tackles are going to drop out. Like they really need to be prepared for all this stuff, and I think Mekhi Becton's inexperience on the inside might be something that they can try to look to exploit and expose throughout the game. So that's going to be on Cam Jurgens and the other guys to kind of try and keep him in the game and make sure he knows what's going to happen. And lastly, Jalen Hurts versus pressure, because Spags is going to bring those zero blitz looks. He did it a bunch the last couple of times they played, and it's just something that he leans on. It's going to happen. Maybe it'll only be a handful of times, but the Eagles need to have a plan for that in place, because I know Jalen Hurts has performed well overall against the blitz and against pressure this season, but he does take a lot of sacks in those situations, and you really don't want that happening. So I hope with the extra week of preparation, they've kind of worked all that like through as far as him and Kellen Moore having a plan against the blitz, having these easy, quick throws that he can make. If it's DeVonta Smith across the middle of the field, Dallas Goedert, whatever, they need to have these answers ready, and that's the only thing that gets me a little scared, because if they do those blitzes early and they like kind of messes with Jalen Hurts, like internal clock, and he's holding the ball too long, that's where we've seen them kind of the pass game get out of sorts. So I think if he could play a clean game, that'll go a long way for the Eagles.
Yeah, that's the one area of the combo of Mekhi Becton and Jalen Hurts, because Jalen's taken over a lot more of the protection, right? Because like Jason Kelce had done it previously, and Jalen's doing it this year. It's one thing for the blitz, and Jalen's been a whole lot better against the blitz this year than he was last year. Kellen more, credit for that reason on that. But as you talk about it, I mean, everyone knows. You think back to the Super Bowl, you think back to even just these playoff games, the AFC Championship game. Like Spags sends very exotic pressures in situations where you don't necessarily expect it. And I think it's Jimmy Kimsky. Shout out to him. I think he was the one who had put out the stat. But as far as Trent McDuffie in particular, he's only had like 4 games, I believe, in his career where he's been sent on a blitz 4 or more times. But 3 of those have been, at least 2 or 3 of those have been against the Eagles. So Spags especially realizes it with Jalen, trying to negate the mobile quarterback game, also what they're trying to do, running the football and sending those exotic pressures. So that would be an area that I'm also keeping an eye on. Like you mentioned with Becton, with the line, if there's some confusion or Jalen sliding to the wrong side because there's actually a corner blitz that's coming or a slot that's coming on that side. So you saw it against the Niners. Brock Purdy late in the game pressured because of that, did not recognize that McDuffie was coming. Incompletion, have to kick a field goal instead of keeping a drive alive. We'll see. I mean, Jalen's definitely seen it by now, I'm sure, because of all the tape and film, but it's one thing to watch it there versus doing it in a game. So that would be the one thing. I'm also just, I'm not, I wouldn't say like I'm scared or like even severely concerned, but it is something I'm going to keep an eye on because of what Spags likes to do and how he brings that pressure.
Yeah, it's just, there are going to be opportunities though for big plays, like if Spags does that too, because there are times where, I forget who it was, but somebody tweeted out a video where it was like a defensive tackle matched up with a running back on like a swing route, and it was a long touchdown. So if the Eagles are ready for it, it can amount to big explosive plays for the Eagles as well. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see that chess match, because it seems like Spags is the best at dialing up these unique looks at the best time and like almost like the highest leverage moments too, like where you wouldn't really expect. You know how like Vic Fangio kind of those 2-minute drills where it seems like he plays a little bit too conservative, he doesn't want to give up anything. Spags is kind of the complete opposite, where where you think a defense would be playing like prevent coverage with like everybody deep, he's sending like 7 or 8 guys to the quarter. It's just like insane. Like you would never expect it. So the Eagles have to be prepared for this at any moment, whether it's the very first play of the game or the last play of the game. Like Spags gets really, really crazy with these looks, and they have to be ready for it. Just one more thing I wanted to note before we wrap up is just the thing that came out earlier today about the whole Nakobe Dean situation, how he was actually present at practice and watching, and like how Nick Sirianni said like he needs the team as much as the team needs him. I think like we talk about what does Nick Sirianni do and things like that. I think he's so good at like getting messages across and just keeping the locker room connected. And he said together, like that was one of his messages and his main words that he used after the whole AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts kind of drama that happened or whatever, like tough together, like detailed, whatever. Like the fact that he's able to kind of send these messages, and now we might see Nakobe Dean like walk out of the tunnel with the team instead of Nolan Smith carrying his jersey. Like these things mean something, and I think it's going to give them that little extra boost that they need at the end of the day for the game.
That would be good. We still naturally, we make these predictions. It's been a blast all year long. We've had a really hot streak for a while, and we can maybe cooled off a bit. But it's the big game here, so we got to have, kind of go through the analysis and have the best plays for people to go with. We usually go with the first time touchdown scorer, so we'll stick with that. Have you thought about that? Like, who do you go with in the big game here? Who scores first touchdown score?
So I was thinking, I feel like all season long I've kind of been going with like a little bit of the like obscure names that you wouldn't really expect, or like a player from the opposing team. But I'm going to go super chalky this time around, kind of go against what I normally do. But based on their 2 postseason games that they've played already, James Cook and Joe Mixon each scored the first touchdown for their respective teams. It wasn't the first touchdown in the game necessarily, but they both scored the first touchdown for their teams. So I'm going to go Saquon Barkley as the first touchdown scorer in this game. I think the Eagles might get a stop. The Chiefs might get the ball to start. Eagles get a huge stop, and then I don't know if it's going to be – hopefully it'll be a 70-yard touchdown run, but either way, I think Saquon Barkley is going to get the first touchdown of the game. Okay.
I like it. We want to see that. Everybody wants to see Saquon. I'm going to say – I was considering Saquon. I think I took him last week, but I'm going to go with Jalen. I think that it's going to be He could just get the brotherly shove, but I feel like it might be just something where we saw back in Kansas City last year where they got some of the quarterback runs working and an opportunity there. So I'm going to say Jalen Hurts, a little run game action, try to key on Saquon a little bit too much, leads to an opening for Jalen. So we'll go with that. Both Eagles, sometimes we take the opposing team, but there you go. You got to like that.
What's one more thing? My initial pick, it was going to be Noah Gray for the Chiefs, their second tight end. So that was like, but I was like, that's obscure. That's a little too crazy. Maybe I was trying to do a little too much, but yeah, Saquon is going to go who I finalized my pick with.
Okay, Anthony throws that out there. A little subtlety though, so if someone wants to be crazy and take a little outlier, just sprinkle something on that one. But all right, score predictions though, as we always do. What do you got for official score? I think it was like 49.5 was the total, and it opened up as the Chiefs 1.5 point favorites. Depending on which book you're at, it got all the way to even. Like it's a pick 'em. A couple still have it as one, but I saw a couple books that had it as even. So what are you going with? Score predictions here for the game.
So it sounds crazy to even predict this because, like I said, I thought my confidence would be a little bit lower at this point, a little bit more scared of the Chiefs, but I have the Eagles winning. I have them winning by 2 possessions. I feel like I've kind of predicted this for a bunch of the playoff games so far, and it's worked out relatively well. I have the Eagles winning 28-17 over the Chiefs to win Super Bowl.
Let's go. I really, really hope that's what. I really do, because we don't need one of those nail biters. That's not what I want. I'm a little bit closer. I will say that in my prediction here, it's not as close as it sounds. So I'm going to say 27-20, but I'm going to say it's 27-13. Chiefs score late. They try to get an onside kick. They can't. Eagles win 27-20. So it's a one possession ultimately, but not even necessarily feeling that close. There we go. We almost made it. Can't believe it. It's crazy because I feel like this week took a month to get here, but we are almost there for the game. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you haven't already, and then come hang out on the game stream. We're going to be streaming probably an hour beforehand, me and Thomas. So we'll see you then, and let's get this done, baby. Go Birds. Until next time, this has been the Philly Special.